This is the prison break that made Winston Churchill famous. It's December 1899, and Britain's future Prime Minister is on the run in enemy territory, hundreds of miles from safety, with no map, no food, and no plan. If they catch him, it's over, one way or another. If he's lucky, he'll escape and make a name for himself. How did a lowly British aristocrat end up escaping prison, getting ambushed on an armored train, become the highest-paid war correspondent in the Empire, and the youngest man in British Parliament? Over the next few minutes, you'll see how this escape, and Churchill's wild life leading up to it, launched the career of one of history's most famous and controversial leaders. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874 at his family's estate, Blenheim Palace. Strawberry leaves and Blenheim. A gift from the crown to his ancestor John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough, for winning every single battle he ever fought in. And what a time to be born. The British Empire was at its apex, commanding a quarter of the world's landmass and population. But unfortunately, since John Churchill's day, successive Churchills weren't exactly an impressive lot. 5 of the first 7 managed to inherit a little more than pathological depression. However, Winston's own father, Lord Randolph Churchill, happened to be a powerful speaker and rising political star. Secretary of State for India one moment, Chancellor of the Exchequer the next. But a badly timed tantrum over his first budget not being approved left him politically unemployed. He never recovered from the moment. His career stalled, his health slipped, some kind of mysterious illness, and soon after, he kicked the can. Winston was just 20 when his father died, but while Randolph was still around, he made no secret of his disappointment in young Winston. His reports were mediocre at best, and Randolph quickly dismissed him as an academic failure. Send him to Eton, his old alma mater, and let the boy drag down the family name? Not a chance. Harrow instead. There he stayed, true to form, bottom of the class. 3 years, no progress. It only confirmed what Randolph already believed. The boy was going nowhere. So Winston was shifted to the army class to prep for Sandhurst. Not because Randolph saw promise, rather, the army didn't require any, just a post and a surname would do. His father wanted him to go into the infantry, but Winston preferred the cavalry. Infantry required higher marks, but it was cheaper. Struggling to keep ends met as a fashionable couple in high society, debts were accumulating for the Churchills. So when Winston finally got into Sandhurst on his 3rd try, he disregarded his father's wishes and went into the cavalry, the 4th Hussars, much to his father's fury.
You should be ashamed. Never have I received a really good report of your conduct. You have failed, always behind. You will become a mere social wastrel. Your mother sends her love.
After his father's death in 1895, Winston's mother devoted herself to furthering Winston's career. She was Jenny Jerome, daughter of Leonard Jerome, a Wall Street tycoon from Chicago and New York. Yup, an American. And she wasn't alone. Across the Atlantic, a whole wave of wealthy American women, commonly referred to as dollar princesses, were marrying into Britain's cash-strapped aristocracy. What can you do when the roof's leaking, the staff haven't been paid in months, and Cousin Gwyneth just pawned the silverware for a fresco of the family pugs clad in full battle armor? You dust off the 3rd son from your 2nd marriage and pray the Americans don't ask about his hobbies. The Brits got bailouts with cheekbones, and the Americans got a coat of arms stitched onto everything short of their own foreheads. Winston had his sights set on Parliament, and Jenny set hers on becoming the most desirable lady in Mayfair. She used her status, beauty, and cunning to gain access to some of the most influential people in the Empire. It wasn't long before Winston got his army commission and set his sights squarely on fame and cash money, baby. He had no intention of rotting in Blenheim, quoting Caesar with other chinless aristocrats who never so much as thrown a punch. Jenny pulled a couple of strings and landed him on the front lines of the Cuban War of Independence, complete with a fat contract to publish his dispatches in the Daily Graphic. In Cuba, a bullet goes over his head and kills the horse beside him, the first of some 50 times in his life he'd come under fire. In August 1897, Churchill joined his first campaign for the crown. in British India's northwest frontier. Churchill joined the Mulligan Field Force, raised by Sir Bindon Blood to punish the Pathans for incursion. The Pashtun were angry. For hundreds of years, they had controlled the mountainous regions of Mulligan and much of the Hindu Kush. They never forgave the British for dividing their lands between the newly created Afghanistan and British India. This was a formidable group of people. Not only could they kill you with astonishing accuracy from long range, they could also fight hand-to-hand with intense ferocity. Struck by the fearlessness of the Pathans and the lack of mercy they showed their enemies, Churchill watched as his friends were cut to pieces. It was during this bloody campaign Winston claimed his first kills as a soldier after firing his revolver into a deadly melee. Despite the danger, Winston was determined to stand out. En route to Mulligan, he bought a grey pony to ensure he would be noticed amongst a regiment's sea of brown horses, even if it put a bigger target on his back. As he put it, "I have faith in my star. I do not believe the gods would create so potent a being as myself for so prosaic an ending." Okay, buddy. And he rode into battle with it. Even as fellow soldiers took cover in the trees, he rode his grey pony along the front of the skirmish line, practically tempting fate. All in all, it was a successful expedition for Churchill. He saw action, he was under fire, he learned a ton about guerrilla warfare, and he published his first book off the back of the experience. The Story of the Mulligan Field Force. Before the year was out, Churchill attached himself to the Tira Expeditionary Force in India. Another skirmish, another opportunity for glory. But Africa was where the real action was brewing. At his urging, his mother persuaded the Prime Minister to send him to Sudan, overruling Lord Kitchener,
The local commander-in-chief,
who considered the young officer too much of an opportunistic pain in the Churchill reached the field just in time for the Battle of Omdurman, one of the British Army's last great cavalry charges. He personally shot several Mahdists fighters. In all, about 20,000 Mahdists were killed for roughly 500 British casualties. He cabled vivid reports to the London press and later spun them into The River War, one of his most famous books. But the campaign left its mark on him. The slaughter of the Mahdists stripped away Churchill's rosy view of war, rather than the noble quest he once imagined. Yet, self-belief never faltered. "I destroyed those who molested me, and so passed out without any disturbance of body or mind." Churchill's last 4 years had been a cycle of wars, dispatches, books, and medal hunting. So when Robert Ascroft, a seasoned Conservative MP from Oldham, asked him to run in double harness in an upcoming by-election, Churchill recognized it as the opening he'd been waiting for to finally break into politics. Churchill accepted only for Ascroft to promptly catch pneumonia and drop out of life just days before the election. So who does Churchill get lumped with instead? James Maudsley, a balding Union man 28 years older, who'd been slogging through Oldham's mills since Churchill was still dribbling into his porridge. Reporters had a field day and mocked Churchill relentlessly.
Mr. Churchill, who as a politician is hardly out of his swaddling clothes, is pushed to the fore so that Mr. Maudsley may carry him into Parliament.
And the ticket was soon nicknamed the Scion and the Socialist. Despite the ridicule, the pair found easy footing. Maudsley took to Winston's restless energy, while Churchill leaned on a guide who could point out every millgate in Oldham and most of the men who kept the looms turning within. Greeting factory hands was one thing, winning their votes with words was quite another. Oddly enough, Winston, the man history would come to define by his oratory, had to painfully labor line by line for the very skill that many would later mistake as innate. He would spend hours carefully writing and exhaustively rehearsing every line of his speeches, even for brief remarks. His friends joked that he spent the best years of his life composing his impromptu speeches. In fact, Churchill also had a speech impediment. He couldn't pronounce his S's, so he hired a... One sec. Let me preface by saying I didn't make this up. A throat specialist, Sir Felix Seaman, who made him rehearse the tortured line, "The Spanish ships I cannot see, for they are not in sight," hour after hour until his S's stopped hissing. Speech quirks were hardly disqualifying in high society. In fact, the Prince of Wales couldn't pronounce his R's.
Where is the London twain? Bring another at once.
which resulted, funnily enough, in it becoming fashionable to do the same in high society. So while not being able to pronounce his S's did him no real harm, Churchill's campaign lacked another key ingredient: glamour, and his mother Jenny would be the one to provide it. Crowds crammed into halls just to catch a glimpse of her, and she charmed factory hands with ease. Despite all this, it wasn't enough. On July 6th, the Liberals won by roughly 1,300 votes. Churchill had failed. Back in London, he got no sympathy from party elders. Arthur Balfour, the future Prime Minister, was overheard sneering,
I thought he was a young man of promise. It appears he's a young man of promises.
Broke and seatless, Churchill remained determined. He had no money, no job, and no reputation. He had staked everything on the weight of his family's name, not his own. What he needed now was a chance. What he needed was a war. Fortunately, for Churchill anyway, a war was brewing in southern Africa. Diamonds had been found in the region which turned British heads. But it was the discovery of massive gold deposits in the Transvaal that really piqued their interest, transforming one of the poorest regions in the world into one of the wealthiest. There was just one tiny hiccup. The Transvaal wasn't British territory. Unfortunately, the gold lay beneath Boer lands. The Boers were fiercely independent settlers of European descent, tracing their roots to the Dutch East India Company's arrival to the region in the mid-17th century. Gold, found in southern Africa. Brilliant! Tell Mr. Rhodes to get us in on the action. Not on our land. Them Boers have it. They're rather vaguely European, no? Too long in Africa makes a man brutish, no matter the ancestry. If you ask me, we ought to pop on over there and re-civilize these brutes. Those minds need order. Can't have the miners squabbling amongst each other. Who better than us with our superior moral character to settle this? Ring up the War Office, have our men show up uninvited, claim everything, and call it our burden. Time we stuck a Union Jack in the Transvaal. Now, let's address the ongoing famine in India. Yes, famine. Millions starving. What to do? Viceroy Curzon says too much aid might make them lazy. Oh, no, can't have that at all. Well then, gentlemen, it's settled. No aid for the Indians. Right now, who's up for a Sunday roast and a cheeky pint at the pub? Back in Africa, tensions quickly escalated as Britain stacked troops along the Transvaal borders, neatly cutting the Boer Republic off from the sea. On October 9, 1899, the Boers had enough. Withdraw or face war. Britain, naturally of course, refused and war erupted. Few hoped it could be averted, least of all, Winston Churchill. But this time, he wasn't allowed to serve. He was barred from enlisting due to a new War Office rule banning soldiers from moonlighting as correspondents and correspondents from doubling as soldiers. The rule existed for one reason, and one reason only. Winston
Bloody Churchill!
In the River War, he'd publicly criticized General Kitchener for turning Omdurman into a slaughterhouse. Blaming him for butchering the wounded, Kitchener never forgot, neither did the army. No more soldier correspondence.
Majesty's army has rules, bro. Rule 1. Massacre is totally fine. Rule 2. Never, ever write about Rule 1. Remember, it's not massacre, it's liberation.
Churchill couldn't care less. He was set to become the highest paid war correspondent in the empire. Fresh off a bidding war between the most cutthroat newspapermen in Britain, he was going to make more money writing about the war than most men fighting it. Armed with a mandate to be close to the action, he wasted no time once in Africa. Before long, he found himself aboard a British armored train. At least, that's what they insisted on calling it. In reality, it was a tin can on wheels, rolling straight into Boer-controlled territory. Churchill wanted action, and he was about to get it. Soon, a long hill rose ahead, lined with black spots. Boers, 100 of them, with field guns waiting. The trap was sprung, shells rained down. Most men ducked. Churchill charged straight into the chaos. He sprinted between wrecked cars, pulling the wounded to safety, shouting names, commands, anything to keep the men moving. Miraculously, the engine remained intact. But its driver, wounded and afraid, was ready to flee. Churchill grabbed his arm. "No man is hit twice in one day," he insisted. The driver relented. Under a storm of bullets, Churchill leapt into action, clearing the line, rallying soldiers, loading the wounded. As the engine lurched forward, the Boers closed in on their prize. Surrounded on all sides, the British had become sitting ducks. A single white flag was raised in surrender. Furious, Churchill sprinted back toward the men still trapped. With the rest of his comrades already fallen or captured, he found himself cornered by a Boer soldier. Unarmed and alone, he glared down the barrel of his enemy's rifle. Churchill was forced to accept a fate he considered worse than death: surrender. Despite his misery, Churchill was a very fortunate prisoner. Not only did the Boers tend to wounded British soldiers with surprising compassion, they let the prisoners buy new clothes, smoke cigarettes, read the news, and hell, even knock back beers, which feels less like a war and more like a very awkward lad's holiday. Back in London, his bravery had made headlines, turning him into a national hero. Our boy was finally getting famous. But these luxuries did little to ease Churchill's frustration of being sidelined. Rotting in a prison was simply not his style. For him, the solution was simple: escape. We should rebel. Gentlemen, listen up. I've decided sneaking out is too simple. We don't just escape. Oh, no. We rise up, storm the city, kidnap the Boer president, and end the war tonight. History will remember us as heroes.
History books? Who cares? They're written by us anyways. And I just ordered a new hat. You think I'm gonna miss hat day for this?
Cowards! Surely the rest of you desire freedom.
Yeah, sure, that sounds great and all. But the guards want to play croquet, so I figured we'd just do that instead. Yeah.
Cowards, the lot of you. Cowards.
You're on your own, kid.
But, I be hero, you be hero. You be hero, I be hero. In the end, Churchill was forced to quietly scale the prison wall alone in the dead of night. With no map, no food, and no plan, he set about getting as far away from the prison as possible. The guards were yet to notice his absence. 300 miles of hostile ground stretched between him and freedom in Lourenço Marques, a 300-year-old seaside town in neutral Portuguese East Africa. Churchill gained a significant head start until his barber triggered a manhunt due to a missed morning shave. Yoo-hoo, Winnie boy! Yes, his barber shows you how lax conditions were. Churchill's friends tried to stall, but the guards grew suspicious. The manhunt for Churchill had begun. An entire nation mobilized in his pursuit. Dead or alive posters plastered the countryside. Churchill spent days desperately staggering alongside the railway tracks. Under the cover of nightfall, he would latch onto passing trains, hoping they would take him the right way. Churchill was, by his own admission, not a very religious man. However, he had become so desperate, he found himself praying long and earnestly. Without supplies and almost no food or water, he felt sure that he would be caught. Then one night, he spotted something strange, lights burning in the darkness. He crept closer. A coal mine, with rows of small houses clustered around it. Increasingly desperate and thoroughly out of options, Churchill knocked on the closest house. As he awaited a response, Churchill had no idea whether he had just sacrificed his freedom or found a way to safety. The door opened to reveal none other than the mine's manager, John Howard. Churchill's wanderings had somehow brought him before one of the only Englishmen still in the Transvaal. 2 months earlier, the Boer government had ordered all British subjects to leave the country. But Howard had gained a special exemption due to his role with the mine. By sheer luck, Churchill had stumbled upon the one man that could save him. Earlier that same day, Boer agents had scoured the mine, searching door to door for him. Despite this, Howard agreed to help, risking both his freedom and his life in the process. Churchill's face was everywhere. Over 3,000 copies of his portrait had been distributed across the country. There was no safe place to hide. So they shoved him underground. He was crammed into an empty pony stable deep in the mine. Churchill's quest for freedom had brought him here, living in pitch darkness with rats for roommates. His future was entirely reliant on the kindness of strangers. For days he lay waiting as Howard and his allies planned the next step. Finally, they come up with a plan. So there's this guy working at the mine, Charles Burnham, who runs a side business shipping wool to Portuguese East Africa, the exact port Churchill needs to reach. They hit Churchill by having him burrow into one of the wool bales on the train. Inside the boxcar, he found a gun, enough food for twice the length of the journey, plus 3 bottles of tea and a bottle of whiskey. The space was cramped, barely tall enough to sit upright. Now, here's the crazy part. Charles Burnham chose to escort Churchill himself, knowing the guards would search the train at every stop. He paid some in cash, others in whiskey. Each time danger loomed, Burnham stepped forward with a smile, a drink, or a distraction, keeping Churchill hidden. For 3 tense days, Churchill remained hidden and motionless, his life completely in Burnham's hands. Once they'd crossed the border safely into neutral territory, Churchill thrust his head out of hiding. He recklessly fired his revolver into the air. Churchill truly lived by his maxim, always more audacity. He later recalled, "I sang and I shouted and crowed at the top of my voice. I was carried away by thankfulness and delight." Of course, until he reached the safety of the British consulate, he remained in danger of being recaptured. Finally, the train reached its destination. Burnham, who had secretly crossed the border alongside Churchill and knew the area intimately, led him through a maze of streets. They moved in silence as Churchill blindly followed Burnham until the man came to a sudden stop. Above the consulate, the Union Jack broke into view, snapping in the wind in a brilliant red and blue, filling Winston with relief. Even now, dirty and exhausted, Churchill remained stubbornly himself. He marched straight up to the front door and demanded an immediate audience with the Consul General. Churchill's trial had left him so unrecognizable, they actually tried to dismiss it.
"Be off. The consul cannot see you today,"
the secretary ordered. This effort triggered a furious reaction. Churchill stood his ground, screaming and shouting and creating such a scene that the Consul General himself made his way down to see what was going on. He approached the filthy, defiant young man standing before him. It was hard to see it then, but the boy standing there would become a defining face of the 20th century. In the summer of 1900, Churchill would leave Africa and return to England as a national hero. His exploits were splashed across newspaper headlines throughout the empire. The young soldier's daring escape was retold in pubs, parlors, and parliament alike. He had become the hero of the empire. Just a year after losing in Oldham, Churchill returned and won his first seat in Parliament, in the very same place he'd once lost. So what's the overarching takeaway from Churchill's early life? Belief comes before ability. Long before Churchill had proven anything, he carried one unshakable conviction. He was destined for greatness. His father dismissed him, his classmates doubted him, half of Parliament sneered at him, yet he persisted. That belief carried him through open fire, prison walls, battlefields, and doubt. He was neither the brightest student nor the most disciplined officer, but he was relentless. Belief came before ability, and belief in time allowed ability to emerge. In February 1901, a young Winston Churchill made his way to the House of Commons, newly arrived in Parliament and eager to be noticed. At only 26, he delivered his first speech from the very seat where his father had resigned. Youngest man in Parliament after your second crack at it? Pretty decent start if you ask me. Oh, and remember, stay curious.